Okay, so in this video, I just wanted to go through the photosynthesis PowerPoint. So there are some important words that you're going to meet in the chapter. So the first thing is, I suppose, is the definition of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is the way that plants make their own food using light energy, sunlight energy. Photosynthesis occurs in the leaves of plants, okay? Now, humans don't photosynthesize, animals don't photosynthesize. Humans and animals have to eat food, whereas plants can make their own food, okay? Now, the word equation for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide and water. And then above and below the arrow there, you need chlorophyll and sunlight. And then you're making glucose and oxygen. Now, remember when you were in first year and you were drawing the plant cell, you talked about that green colour, that green pigment, chlorophyll, that's found in a container called a chloroplast. So you would have drawn chloroplasts in a plant cell with chlorophyll inside in the chloroplast. Animal cells, no chloroplasts, because animals don't photosynthesize. We don't have chlorophyll. We don't look green. Plant cells look green because of that green colouring, that chlorophyll that they have. The chemical equation is underneath. I've just put it in there, but you will not be asked that in your exam. But look, if you were doing Leaving Cert Chemistry, you'll see it, or Leaving Cert Biology, sorry, you'll see it. But I just left it in, but it's the word equation that you need to focus on, okay? Now, how is photosynthesis important to the earth? Or the first thing there is that the reactants, remember, in a reaction are the things that are coming together, the things that are mixing together or combining together. So the four things that you need for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide, water, light and chlorophyll. You need those four things. Two products of photosynthesis then will be oxygen and glucose. Now, what happens to the oxygen that a plant makes? Well, the oxygen that a plant makes is released to the air. So that's why you talk about having plants and trees growing on the earth so that they produce oxygen. They release the oxygen to the air. Secondly, the glucose that the plant makes is a food source. So it's stored, it's either used by the plant to make energy during respiration, or what will happen is that the plant will store this glucose as starch. And then you eat plant. And that's where you get your energy from. So you eat different plants and we get energy from those, okay? So remember that plants have to photosynthesize first to make their glucose, and then they have to respire that glucose or change that glucose into energy during respiration. So plants have to do both processes. Animals only have to do respiration because they eat their food. Now, so most organisms need oxygen to survive, and photosynthesis is important to the earth because it produces oxygen. Photosynthesis maintains an adequate level of carbon dioxide, and I've just put in the words global warming there. So photosynthesis is also important in that it doesn't allow the level of carbon dioxide to go up very high, which would contribute to global warming, and carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, as you know. So plants and photosynthesis keeps the level of carbon dioxide low and also produces oxygen. So that's why it's important to the earth. And also, of course, it produces food or glucose for living organisms. So we eat the plants then, and we're eating the glucose by eating the plants, if you like. Now, the process of photosynthesis. Well, what has to happen is the carbon dioxide enters the plant through the stomata. Now, stomata, if you can see in the diagram there, are tiny little openings or holes or pores that are mainly on the undersurface of the leaf. So the carbon dioxide gas goes in from the atmosphere or in from the air through stomata and into the leaf, okay? The water goes into the plant from roots. So the roots in the soil will absorb water, and that water goes up through the stem and into the leaves. And there then, in the leaf, the carbon dioxide and water is converted or changed into glucose and oxygen. But the other two things that are required for that process is light, which provides energy. The sunlight provides energy, and the chlorophyll traps that sunlight energy. And then in the chlorophyll there, or with the chlorophyll, in the chloroplast, you're going to convert the carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. And then oxygen is released through the stomata out into the atmosphere. So remember, stomata are tiny little holes or openings in the surface of the leaf, okay? So just to recap on that again, carbon dioxide goes into the leaf, water goes up through the plant and into the leaf, and in the chloroplast, the chlorophyll absorbs the light energy and uses that energy to convert carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. So the chloroplast is where photosynthesis happens, really. The chloroplast is a little organelle in the plant cells. Okay? Now, You can see the plant cell here, and again, look, you can see the chloroplast, which is where photosynthesis occurs, because that's where your chlorophyll is. And remember, you need the chlorophyll to trap the light's energy to convert the carbon dioxide and water into glucose and oxygen. Now, you need to know the reasons why photosynthesis is regarded as a chemical process. Remember what we have said about a chemical process. A chemical process where new substances are formed. So photosynthesis is a chemical process because new substances are formed. What new substances are formed? Glucose and oxygen are made from carbon dioxide and water. Okay, it's a biological process because it happens in living cells. It happens in plant cells, particularly the leaf cells. Okay, now what factors will affect photosynthesis? Well, carbon dioxide will affect photosynthesis. The more carbon dioxide, then the greater the rate of photosynthesis. If the plant has very little carbon dioxide available to it, then it can't photosynthesize very much. Photosynthesis, because it happens in living cells, will be controlled by enzymes, and temperature will affect how enzymes work. So if the temperature is very low, then enzymes won't work as well as they should, and so the rate of photosynthesis is lower than what would happen if the temperature was higher. So you know yourselves that during the winter there's very little growth in plants. Grass doesn't grow very well during the winter because it's too cold and the enzymes aren't working at their maximum rate. So the warmer it is during the summer, you get greater growth of plants because the hotter the temperature, the enzymes can work better and photosynthesis occurs better in the plant then. And also light, of course, the greater the light intensity, then the more photosynthesis you will have, okay? So gardeners and horticulturalists put all of this into effect, if you like, when they're growing plants. So growers will increase the temperature by growing plants in a greenhouse, okay? Sometimes you can see them pumping carbon dioxide into greenhouses because the more carbon dioxide available to the plant and the greater the rate of photosynthesis. And also the light then allows for seasonal foods to be grown all year. Now, the experiment that we will do in school, but I just wanted to go through it with you here firstly, is to show that light is needed for photosynthesis. So you're supposed to show that a particular factor is required for photosynthesis. So we're going to use light as our factor. Now, what you have to do first, and I'm going to post a video of this on Edmodo in a second, but what you need to do first is you need to put a plant, like a geranium, into a cupboard, into a dark press for 48 hours. Now, what that does is it de-starches the plant. It takes all the starch out of the plant. And remember now that the glucose that the plant makes is stored in the plant as starch. So when that plant is in a dark press for 48 hours, it can't make any more food. It can't photosynthesize in the press because it's no light. And therefore, you force the plant to use up all the stored food that it has. So when you take that plant out of the press after 48 hours, there's no starch in any of the leaves. All the starch has been used up during respiration to make energy to keep that plant alive. Otherwise, the plant is going to die. If you left that plant any longer, then it would use up all of its stored food. It can't make more food because it can't photosynthesize. There's no light in the dark press, and therefore it would die if you left it there for much longer than 48 hours. So the plant is using up all the starch, all the stored food that's in the leaves while it's inside in the press for 48 hours. The minute you take the plant out, then you're to cover 1 or 2 leaves with tin foil and leave the other leaves exposed to light. And then you leave the plant in bright light for 24 hours so that it can start to photosynthesize again. But think about what's going to happen to the leaves that are covered with tin foil. Now, the next thing I need to talk to you about is how we actually test leaves for starch. How do we prove if there is starch stored in a leaf or not? So the first thing you do is you put the leaf into boiling water for a minute. Okay, so this kills the leaves and stops the leaves from photosynthesizing. But it also actually, the way that you've got this kind of a waxy cuticle on the surface of your leaf, putting it into boiling water removes that cuticle. So reagents or liquids can absorb into the leaf, can soak into the leaf a bit easier once that cuticle has been removed. So you boil the leaf for a minute. Then you're going to put the leaf into boiling alcohol. So do you see in the second diagram there, after you've boiled the leaf in the boiling water, you put it into a test tube with alcohol. And what you'll notice happening here is the alcohol removes the chlorophyll. So when you take the leaves out of that alcohol, then the leaf looks white. All the chlorophyll has been removed from the leaf. That's your step 2. Your third step then is you put your whitened leaves into some lukewarm water, and that just softens the leaves. And then finally, your fourth step is that you add iodine to the leaves. Now, when you were in first year with Mr. O'Connor, you would have tested food for starch. You might have brought in bread or potatoes or crackers or something maybe from home, and you would put some iodine on those crackers or bread. And iodine is reddy orange in the bottle, and it goes blue-black if there's starch in the food, okay? So if there's starch in your leaf, the red-brown iodine in the dropper turns blue-black, okay? So just to recap now again on testing a leaf for starch. So you have to boil the leaf in the water for a minute. That kills the leaf and softens it and allows the iodine to soak into the leaf at the end. Then you put it into hot alcohol. The boiling in hot alcohol for 10 or 15 minutes removes the chlorophyll. So now your leaves look white. Then you put your white leaf into the lukewarm water or boiling water to re-soften it. And then you test for starch using iodine. Okay? Now, I want you to think about, go back a second now to this plant. Remember we covered the leaves after we took it out of the press. We covered some leaves with tinfoil and we left other leaves in light for 24 hours. If you then had tested a leaf that was covered with tinfoil and a leaf that was left exposed to light for starch, what do you think your result would be? So you need to think about that, watch the video, and then I want you to write down what's the effect of light on the plant. So, you know, the leaves that have been covered with tinfoil have had no light. The leaves that have been allowed to are exposed to light have had light. So what do you think the result will be? What would your test for starch be with the leaves that were covered with the tinfoil? What would be the result for your test for starch, the leaves that were exposed to light? So you have a think about that. Watch the video that I'm going to put up next and write down what you think your result might be. Okay, thank you.